Corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis Stone. It would whisper promises in his ear, offer him power for blood. But this time, Renato was sure he could master it. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in the buried temple, another ancient item that was only resurfacing now, drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? What was he doing here? Last time, the stone had fought him for possession of his own soul. Renato at Hot Potato. The Ravens were already here, clawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Nice. That could be...
eyes you have. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger.
Renato wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. The road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing.
There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Renato was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. Wallabies, he thought. Why did it have to be wallabies? Of power. Ooh, you didn't find those every day. The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. Energy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy did they sting if you didn't pay attention.
It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager. Thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once.
And he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him.
Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the Transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. What's the core? Said the stone anxiously.
But even though Reynardo knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. The gem could give great power, but it was evil. But Reynardo had a plan. He would divide the stone into the power half and the evil half. He sought out the sage Calaveras.
Oh, you need a mirror of splitting,
Croaked Calaveras.
I can make one.
Calaveras set up various shiny things. And soon Reynardo was setting the stone down in the middle of Calaveras' lab. There was a flash, and now Reynardo was looking at himself. Except with a mustache, and a goatee and darker hair. There were two Iblis stones. One light, and one dark. Reynardo took the light one. He felt a rush of great power. Now I could defeat the Emperor. Wait a minute. Unfortunately, He couldn't think of any way to use it without hurting someone. That wouldn't be nice. "Give me that," said his evil-looking twin, and he drew his sword. He only got it halfway out of the scabbard when he fainted from the effort. Obviously, neither weak, evil Reynardo nor powerful, nice Reynardo was any threat to the Empire. After the Emperor's victory, they were exhibited in a museum until time ended, which was soon after. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it.
Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away.
Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? What was he doing here? Last time, the stone had fought him for possession of his own soul. Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Somebody had been watching. Once, he'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again?
Not going spectacularly well, thought Reynardo.
Barely landed a claw on him. Boy, someone has spent a lot of money for a graduation present. There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Reynardo was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway? With the new aerobics craze. Am I right? The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with Tomb Raiders. Imagine if you built a house on one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat.
It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once.
And he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him.
Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon.
What's the core?
Said the stone anxiously.
But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it.
The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance.
The stone felt a bit clingy, and he had a feeling it did not have his best interests at heart. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power.
He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Reynardo had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Swordfu school together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself. Except the biggest one. That she was the Emperor's daughter. No. Kill Zenobia, whispered the stone. Before it's too late.
I can't be dying, he thought. I'm the hero. Reynardo had once invested in a jewel store, but it lost money because someone kept robbing it. Twist, it was him.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before? You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be Imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. Ooh, sparkly, thought Reynardo.
The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" "No, don't be ridiculous," it chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you if someone just carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Reynardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards.
Of course there was a puzzle. You couldn't expect the Transcendent Emperor to bury a god's eye in a leather sack where anyone could pick it up.
This couldn't be good for global warming. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical. "No! It's too much power! We'll rip a hole in space and time!" He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Reynardo came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and
Yoo-hoo!
It didn't answer. Ha! He said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer sailed towards the Nexus, Reynardo wondered if the core had been created to silence the stone, or even to feed its hunger. Honestly, he didn't care. He felt terrific, and he appreciated the quiet inside his head.
The Nexus was infested with ravens, but that didn't bother Reynardo. With each death, the converted Iblis stone in his gauntlets glowed brighter, and he felt stronger.
Wow. He was getting a bit bloodthirsty, wasn't he?
Well, he wasn't worried. He was a warrior. They're supposed to be bloodthirsty.
Welcome to Earth.
Reynardo told the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once. The new pathway made Reynardo curious.
Reynardo checked for a false compartment. Nope.
The core, absorbed in the stone, was doing its job perfectly. Reynardo could feel a little eldritch jolt every time he downed a raven, but then it flowed into the glowing stone the way water flows down a riverbed. It all felt perfectly natural, as if all his life, this was what he had been meant to do.
Ooh, wouldn't his gauntlet look swell with that jewel in it?
Reynardo tore through the last remaining guards at the outpost like hot coffee through snow. There was a far speaker toad here. He called the council speaker. He knew she would be thrilled. And she was. She wanted him to come back to base. They had plans to discuss, and a medal to give him. A large, golden medal. Great, said Reynardo. Let's talk about who else I can kill. Then the far speaker croaked again.
Hello, Reynardo,
he said.
If you get sick of slaughtering second-rate birds in the Nexus, I'm waiting for you in the mountains.
Zenobia. She missed him. She loved him. Once she saw how awesome he'd become, maybe she'd join him. They'd kiss and... Well, if she did refuse for some reason, he was no match for him now.
Zenobia was taunting him. No doubt she hoped to lure him into a trap, but it didn't matter, did it? He could fight his way out of any trap. He was invincible. This was gonna be fun. So where was this ambush? Reynardo couldn't wait. At Sword Fu School, she'd always studied a little harder, practiced a little longer, complained really a lot less. And then she'd become a sorceress. He'd always known he'd have to take her by surprise or not at all. But this would be a surprise indeed.
They really needed to redecorate anyway. I wonder what happens if I go that way. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled?
The mountain paths were infested with ravens. That was swell. Every time he cut one down, the stone glowed a little brighter.
In fact, everything glowed a little brighter. Look how white the snow was, and how very blue the raven blood was.
Seriously, where was she? He wanted to try his new strength against hers.
Beautifully. Where was a bard when you needed one? God, the lead raven. Renato felt antsy. He'd found a source of great power. But instead of joining with the rebels, he was on a fool's errand the Emperor's daughter had sent him on. The rebels were preparing a last-ditch attack against the Imperial fleet, counting on Renato to show up in time. Would he be too late?
At the end of the path was Zenobia. "I thought you were going to ambush me," he said, a little put out. "I owe you better than that."
I know how you feel about me, love. You want to join up with me, don't you? You got to admit, we'd make a great team.
Of all the arrogant, ham-handed, half-assed, half-witted...
Oh, come on. What else you here for?
"That," she said, as a dropship poured a bucket of green liquid on his head. "Drowsy gas. You can't stop me with drowsy gas, Zenobia. My power's too strong. Zenobia? Where was she?"
When he awoke, he was staring up at the sky. Zenobia looked down at him, frowning.
"I probably ought to kill you, but that'd be a bit tawdry, wouldn't it?" She was tossing the glowing stone from paw to paw. "This is pretty."
Zenobia!
He shouted, and then he fell back into sleep. On the Farfarer, Renato drank his favorite headache remedy. But it did no good. Zenobia had beaten him again. Oh, he really should have listened to the Iblastone in the first place instead of messing around with the core. He had a bad feeling about the upcoming fight. But what kind of hero misses the final battle?
Renato was bruised and tired. He wasn't looking forward to killing ravens. It didn't even seem scary. It felt like a chore, like sweeping the practice room at Swordfu School, which he'd done his best to leave for Zenobia whenever he could. What would she do with the glowing Iblastone? That should terrify him, shouldn't it? But he just felt dull and stupid as he carved his way towards probable doom. He hadn't noticed that path before. It was all so unfair.
He'd wanted to protect himself, protect the world from the Iblerstone's hunger for blood and souls. And all he'd done is get mugged. Next time he owned a supernatural artifact that wanted tribute, he'd serve it champagne and caviar.
Hey! I got his friend as a swan. Could he join up? He dyes his feathers? Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought.
Zenobia was cleaning blood off her sword and weeping. It's so hungry. I can't stop killing, she said. But I fed it the core of the Sky Ripper, and now it's hungry again. She wept. It was true. The Iblerstone was black again, a void that seemed to suck all the light out of the sky. Take it from me, Renato, while you still can. Okay. I'll take it, he said. Yes, he thought. This is what it means to be a hero. To save the soul of even his old enemy when it looked like all was lost. He stepped forward to accept the sword from her outstretched hand. She flipped the sword, and the blade went into his gut. As the Iblerstone sucked his soul into its infinite darkness, he could vaguely hear a voice, something like Zenobia's chuckle. Sucker. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.
There would be a way to win. Renato could feel it. He'd have to explore choices he'd never made before he could figure it all out, though. And with that, the book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again, and he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Where was a workbench when you needed one? Oh, never mind. Smashing things was fun. The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Bernardo had tried everything. Zenobia had loved him to death. The Sky Ripper had destroyed everything. The Iblistone had corrupted everyone who held it. He'd never put much faith in Lapino. But Lapino was all he had left. He could sense the jewel's power. He had a feeling they were going to be great friends. What's behind door number 2? This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes.
everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lapino. Where had the mad rabbit got to?
His sword food teacher used to say power gems were cheating. Stupid old fart. Those sheaves were really very well made, weren't they?
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power,